First Take on this Feel Good Friday. Thank you so much for hanging with us. And a special welcome to everyone watching us on ESPN. We're giving you a little preview of things to come when First Take makes the official move to ESPN on Tuesday, January 3rd. I'm Molly Qerim, holding things down in Bristol. My guy, Stephen A. Smith, is in New York City, and Max Kellerman is in Vegas. Morning, guys. We ready to work?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Going on. Ready to do this.
All right,
let's do it.
Let's get into it. A lot to discuss. Coming up, Michael Vick joins the show live. He has a message for Cam Newton, so you don't want to miss that. Stay tuned. But we start with Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. After Tony Romo gave a heartfelt speech on Tuesday admitting Dak Prescott has earned the starting spot, Jerry Jones spoke yesterday saying it's not necessarily over for Romo in Dallas. Listen up.
It's not goodbye. I think Tony's got 5 years left of really competing for a Super Bowl. Okay? I believe Tony will be the quarterback on a Super Bowl team.
This one?
I believe that strongly. And so that's, we're talking generic now.
Right.
And I have no plans for him not to be part of the Dallas Cowboys.
Thank you, Jerry.
Not a consideration.
Oh, Jerry Jones, the gift that keeps on giving. Stephen A., how should Dak feel about Jerry's comments?
Well, what Dak should feel is that, Jerry Jones is showing a level of loyalty to Tony Romo that one would deem appropriate or what have you. For me, it's not necessarily it's something that could be said or saved for the end of the season as opposed to right now. I definitely think it's a bit premature on a part of Jerry Jones, completely unnecessary. But that's not the biggest takeaway I get from all of this, to be quite honest with you, Max. The biggest takeaway that I get from this is that I don't want to be prejudiced in any way. I don't know whether it's senility. I don't know whether it's another marketing tool being exercised by Jerry Jones. I don't know whether he's lost his damn mind. None of it makes sense. But what are you doing mentioning Tony Romo and Super Bowl in the same sentence? You had him for 10 years. The man produced 2 playoff victories for you. Yet somehow, some way, because he's hurt at the age of 36 with a myriad of injuries, primarily due to his back, suddenly he has a future. Suddenly it potentially expands to as much as 5 years. Suddenly the words Super Bowl and Tony Romo are mentioned in the same sentence. So let me get this straight. When he was younger and healthier and winning games in the regular season, but couldn't do a damn thing for you in the playoffs. When he got there, he couldn't win then. You weren't talking about Super Bowl then. But now that he's older, prone to more injuries, durability a high question mark, and level of capability diminishing greatly due to the fact that you got Dak Prescott and you ain't going to even see much of Tony Romo. Now suddenly he needs to be mentioned in the same breath as a Super Bowl. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's unbelievable that Jerry Jones would say those words out of his mouth, but I cannot say that I'm completely surprised. It is Jerry Jones, by the way. He loves headlines, and clearly this was another way to get it. It worked. Sorry, it worked, but it is what it is. I felt it was a ridiculously asinine statement to make.
If you are Dak Prescott, how do you feel? Because that's the question. You got to feel good about this. I know the knee-jerk reaction is, damn, Dak must be sitting there like, what do I have to do? We won all these games, and my QBR is this high, and all these kind of things, and I'm rookie of the year, maybe him or Zeke, or MVP conversation. What I got to do to get the owner to stop talking about the last guy who, as you said, didn't win even a whole bunch of playoff games and is broken down and old. Like, what do I have to do? No, wrong. Dak should be feeling good about this right now. He should be feeling great about it, in fact, because what Jerry Jones is showing is if you ball for the Dallas Cowboys, I'm talking about ball out, because Tony Romo has done that, Stephen A. No, he hasn't brought them a Super Bowl, but he's been an excellent quarterback for a long, long time. If you do that for the Cowboys, Jerry Jones got your back. That's what I'm taking in if I'm Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott has looked excellent from day one of the preseason. That first preseason game we saw him in, that guy looks like the real deal. And he's done nothing to dispel those feelings, particularly behind that dominant offensive line. So if Dak thinks he's going to play, have a long, successful career with the Dallas Cowboys, and it sure looks like he will, this is an owner who's got his back, who when he gets to be the older quarterback, who maybe has an injury and some young kids in, Jerry Jones will have his back. That's how Dak should take it.
Well, let me say this to you. I mean, I definitely appreciate your words, your sentiments, Max Kellerman, because obviously you're somebody that's religiously gone about the business on this show of defining and confusing mediocrity with greatness. Because to you, it's all the same as far as I can tell. That's the way I've deciphered the words that have come out of your mouth. If you're a 500
Is that
team,
because I've
you're
called
good,
your
you're
arguments
respectable,
great?
or
Is
whatever
that why
the
you're
case
saying
may be.
that?
Listen, this is all I'm trying to say to you, my man. Listen to me this morning. Listen to me clearly, okay? Here's the deal. If you are Jerry Jones, think about this for a second. Let me take your analogy, Max. Let's put it in its proper perspective. Let's just call it like we see it. Do you understand that Tony Romo has never won more than one playoff game in any postseason? He's only won 2, period. But it was one in different years. He's never won more than one playoff game in any season. And he's only won one playoff game in the season twice in his 10 years. That's your definition of balling out and how Jerry Jones taking. Let me tell you why Jerry Jones. Let me tell you why Dak Prescott should be.
Let me turn that around on you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Are you on record as saying Tony Romo is a mediocre quarterback? That's insane.
In the postseason, yes. In the postseason yesterday.
That's not what we're talking about. I said
yes,
he balled out.
I'm always talking about that.
I said he balled out for years and years with the Dallas Cowboys. He was an excellent quarterback. You said I confused that with mediocrity, meaning you think Tony Romo's a mediocre quarterback. Is that what you think?
I think Tony Romo has produced mediocre results. That's what I was alluding to, number one. Number two, I'm specifically talking about the postseason because unlike you, Max Kellerman, I'm thinking about really, really winning. Not winning in a regular season, not winning when everybody got the same amount of games on the schedule. I'm talking about when half the league is home watching, the other half is playing in the postseason. There's a Lombardi trophy at stake. And what do you do in those particular moments? We're going to talk about Joe Flacco a little bit later on in this show.
Right.
Why is he even relevant?
And
because he's got a Super Bowl title. That's why. Eli Manning, 2 Super Bowls.
But
because he's got 2 of them, that's why.
If Tony Romo had 2 Super Bowl MVPs like Eli does, and he had this career, he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but there's a big gap between first ballot Hall of Famer and mediocre. There are really good quarterbacks along the way, and he is one of them.
All I'm saying is you got to count postseason results, too. And I'm saying you can't ignore that. That's more profound than what you do for me in the regular season. In my mind, when we start talking about winners, when we start using the word greatness, when we start going in that route, you need to give me postseason production.
Okay, so if you're
Dak Prescott,
let me ask you this. If you're Dak Prescott playing behind that offensive line with Ezekiel Elliott and now Stephen Jones seeming to have taken the reins from Jerry in terms of personnel decisions, which is why they're good all of a sudden, right? If you're Dak Prescott, do you think you're going to have playoff success throughout your career? If you as young as you are, as good as this team is, do you expect that you're going to – right. So if Jerry Jones got the back of a quarterback who's bald but hasn't won a lot in the playoffs – how is he going to be toward you 10 years from now when you're an older quarterback, 12, 15 years from now if he plays that long, and you've had postseason success?
Well, we can broach that 10 years from now.
But that's what I'm saying. Dak's got to feel good about the level of Jerry's support for Romo.
I think it's a beautiful thing for you to be looking ahead for a decade for Dak Prescott. It's very touching of you, Max Kellerman, somebody that walks around and religiously tells me tomorrow ain't guaranteed. But Dak could look 10 years down the road and think about how Jerry Jones is going to have his back. By the way, there are plenty of people who have produced for Jerry Jones whose back he has not had. Don't get me started with Emmitt Smith and a few others now. We could go that route, but I won't on this particular moment because I'm in a very good mood today. I'm very, very nice. So I'm not going to go there. But there's plenty of dudes that Jerry Jones have not had their back. And they won. And they've won for him. Listen. Let's stop acting like it's a quarterback. The fact of the matter is he has a special affection and affinity for Tony Romo, his adopted son.
I know you insist that.
We all know this. It is the truth. It's the truth. It happens to be the truth.
Are you saying if you're Dak Prescott, you believe he'll never have a special affinity for you?
I don't think it'll be comparable to Tony Romo's.
Based on what?
Because of what I've seen from Jerry Jones when it comes to Tony Romo. Jerry Jones usually gets rid of people that fail him. Tony Romo has failed him on several occasions. His love for him seems to be undying, unwavering. Okay, that's what it seems to be. This is adopted son. I wouldn't be surprised if they spend Christmas mornings together, for crying out loud. This is what their relationship happens to be. It's okay. It's okay. All I'm saying is, in the end, when we think about greatness, we don't need to be throwing that word out there absent postseason production. If you're Dak Prescott, it is what it is. I understand that.
I never said greatness.
All right, guys.
You said mediocre.
Tony Romo did ask to compete for the job. That wish was not granted by Jerry. Dak 8-0-1 against the spread this season in Dallas, favored by 7 against Baltimore. We're going to get into that game shortly. You guys just heard from the guys about Jerry's comments. We want to know what you think at home. Go on Twitter and vote now. Should the Cowboys keep Dak and Romo? Make your voice count. And speaking of that game, another interesting matchup for Dak Prescott on Sunday as the Cowboys take on the Ravens. Ray Lewis, who played with Joe Flacco for 5 years, had some strong words about his former quarterback on FS1. Gifted? Absolutely. Passionate about what he do? I've never seen that. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's because his personality just isn't that personality. He's not a rah-rah guy. He won't say much. But in the game of football, there has to be some burning fire behind you. Max, does Joe Flacco get a pass because he's won a Super Bowl?
Yeah, and he deserves one. That's how you earn a pass. We don't just give it to him. You go get it. Joe Flacco has the pass, like Eli Manning has a couple of passes, because he won a Super Bowl, yes. And by the way, is Flacco elite? The endless debate. I don't know. How do you define elite? In the regular season, Flacco, if you look at QBR, or just use your eyes, he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. He's average, which, by the way, an average quarterback in the NFL is what most teams would like. If you can get because that's a pretty damn good player, as Joe Flacco is. But there are so many really good ones.
You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about right there. Average.
That's right.
Guys would do a great. If they can do anything to have an average quarterback.
The stuff you say. At that position
say
has a lot of value in the NFL. That is true. However, in the playoffs, Flacco becomes a top 10 type quarterback. QBR goes from 60 to 68. That's usually around a top 10 quarterback. So you tell me, is that elite or not? Or is that just really good? Whatever that is, he's a good quarterback, solid in the regular season, and in the playoffs, he's excellent. So however you want to define that, that's what Joe Flacco is. He won the Super Bowl. He has that pass. Absolutely.
This is a tough one. Here's why. Because of 2 points that you made, which I will give you credit for, and it's a rare moment. I think it's important for viewers in First Take to know that I'm giving you credit because it's rare that you deserve it. So let me be kind
the pass.
And give it
you
to
don't give
you.
it,
Okay?
I take it.
Okay, I got you. 2 of the last 3 years, the Baltimore Ravens have missed the playoffs, but you are right. Flacco does up it in the postseason. His QBR does elevate, not to mention the fact that he's a Super Bowl champion. However, here's where it gets a bit tricky. He got his money. And since he got his money, he's missed the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. Lost a divisional playoff game, some would say he should not have lost, sandwiched in between all that, okay? And this year, they've been somewhat mediocre. Not to mention the fact 3 of the previous 4 years coming into this season, you, Maximilian, mathematician extraordinaire and all of this other stuff. You know the QBR was below 53 of the last 4 years entering the season, right?
Yep.
So we got to pay attention to that too. And so then when you couple that, now we get into a different subject. Because with Flacco, while I want to give him credit, and I want to give him credit for that Super Bowl, and I want to give him credit for the cachet that unquestionably provides, it is important to point this out. I consider Ray Lewis one of the greatest leaders, if not the greatest leader we've ever seen in football. In terms of galvanizing the troops. Galvanizing the troops. Don't forget his greatness on the field. I'm just talking about his leadership. As it specifically pertains to dudes being focused, being on their grind, doing what's necessary. Ray Lewis, my man, my brother, I got to say, he might be the greatest leader I've ever seen on a football field. For him to say what he said about Flacco resonates with me, and here's why. It's all right to go out there and just play when you're a good player. But when you are the quarterback, your talent is not the only thing that's relied upon. It's also your leadership ability or lack thereof, which is why we brought into question the great Aaron Rodgers, because of what he's been saying and how he's alienated folks in recent weeks with some of his words. I think about some of the interceptions that Flacco has thrown. I think about some of the games he's come up short. I think about the troops around him and his inability to rally them the way that you would want somebody to be able to do that. I listen to individuals who used to play for the Patriots and still play for the Patriots. They call Tom Brady the ninja. They talk about how he gets in the huddle. They talk about how he goes through certain drills just like the rest of the guys. He's butting heads with them. He's fired up and ready to go. You never see that from Joe Flacco. Now, for us looking on the outside, Max, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because there may very well be certain things we simply do not know. But when Ray Lewis comes out and literally says that about you, that's a problem. And then when your comeback is, well, Ray's definitely a leader. He's definitely more vocal. But 90% of the time, I don't understand what the hell he's saying. That's your comeback if you Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco should be looking in the mirror, looking at the mediocre results that he and his team have produced in recent years and ask himself, what is it I have not done that I was supposed to do to elevate this franchise? Because they certainly paid me the money to do it, and they damn sure didn't give it to me to go out there and be an average quarterback.
My former broadcast partner, Marcellus Wiley, on TV and the radio for the last 5+ years used to talk about this, usually as it pertains to like wideouts who are considered prima donnas. When personality trumps production, people don't want to put up with you anymore. And maybe that is the case in this case with Joe Flacco. When you have a certain style of leadership, which is not very vocal, maybe it's just leading by example, people will let that fly until you don't get the results anymore. And then they start to look at different things, including your personality. They start to question it. I would point out that Flacco has played in 15 playoff games in his career and is 10-5. He, in the playoffs, wins twice as much as he loses, and as we both just acknowledged, elevates his play. So again, is he perfect? No. You can find flaws in every player, and in quarterback, maybe not being a very demonstrative leader is a flaw that is amplified when you're not getting the results on the field, and maybe it's not a great flaw to have. But and fine, that might be fair criticism. But take the entire package of Joe Flacco. He's available in the draft, and you know what he is. Are you drafting him again, Ravens fans? You bet you are. You would take that package, including the Super Bowl and the pass he gets from it, which is partly also due to his ability to perform under pressure.
Yep, but that does not mean he's not getting a pass, because remember, we are holding him accountable since he got the money. And that's something that we can't ignore. We got to pay attention to that. Flacco in his first 2 years in the league when he was in the postseason threw 3 interceptions in the postseason each year. Ever since then, he's been significantly better. We understand that. The flip side to it is, how good have you been since you got the money? And that's something as a society we pay attention to as well. When you get the money and then your level of production dissipates and your leadership ability doesn't come into play, we got a problem. Because when we talk about what Ray Lewis deserved, once upon a time he deserved it because he was that middle linebacker extraordinaire. Then ultimately, it wasn't just because of his play on the field. It was because of the leadership that enabled him, in concert with John Harbaugh and Ozzie Newsome, to hold dudes accountable, which ultimately led to 2 Super Bowl titles. We can't ignore that.
What you're talking about is internal motivation versus external motivation. The kind of contracts, the big contracts you want to give to players, if you're a fan or the franchise, is you want to give those contracts to internally motivated players. Because when they get the money, that doesn't change a thing for them. Their motivation doesn't come from that. It comes from inside of them. Are you questioning Joe Flacco's internal motivation? Because I don't think...
Did you just say, for the record, that money doesn't change your motivation? Did you just say that?
Not for internally motivated players. Kobe Bryant, when he was balling, didn't matter if he got the money or not. Kobe was going to give you everything he had, no matter what. He is an internally motivated guy. That's what made him great. Ray Lewis, you just pointed out. Those are the kind of guys
what's the other category?
Tom Brady. You want to give those guys the money. Well, the guys who, once they get the money, they're externally motivated. That's what they were playing for.
So which one is Flacco? So which one is Flacco?
I don't think Flacco's externally motivated. He seems to me, generally the guys who perform under pressure, that level of competitor who's able to harness whatever he's got when you need it most, generally those are the internally motivated guys. Are you saying that Flacco you're questioning his internal motivation?
I'm questioning it. I'm not definitively saying it's one or the other. I'm saying the fact that I don't know is an indictment against Flacco on a day like today, where his former teammate, who's widely recognized as arguably the greatest leader on a football field we've ever seen and is a future Hall of Famer, that man saying what he said about Flacco gives me cause to pause, because I'm looking at Flacco and I'm saying, you know what, he really has not been the same since he got that money. I am saying that. I am saying that. I don't know why. It could be because of a myriad of injuries that they suffered from last year. It could be because, you know what, things are Ozzie Newsome got to get better personnel. John Harbaugh can't be too comfortable himself. It could be a variety. It might not even be his fault. But it does give me cause to pause, because Ray Lewis could have talked about Harbaugh. He could have talked about Ozzie Newsome. He could have talked about a plethora. He could have talked about Suggs. He said Flacco, and he said what he said. And damn it, if Ray Lewis says something about the Baltimore Ravens, I don't know what closer to gospel you can get on the Ravens than Ray Lewis. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yep, and Joe Flacco certainly doesn't believe that. Like you mentioned, he was saying that he felt a lot of his speeches didn't even make sense. So we'll see if that internally
very disrespectful.
or
Very
externally
disrespectful on his part.
motivated quarterback can get it done on Sunday against Dak Prescott and those Dallas Cowboys.